All right, everyone, we got a pretty special gift for you. We've been working on some stuff behind the scenes. I'm here with one of my good friends now, and we're just going to kind of talk about some stuff that we're doing with dogs. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Valerie, but most people call me Val. I'm Dr. Kuhlmeier to some. I work at Queen's University in Canada. It's in Kingston, Ontario. And yeah, we've been working together to do some research. And I can give a little bit of background on what my interests are and why I got there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Let's go to the beginning.
I'll go to the beginning. Yes. Okay. So way long ago, longer than I want to admit. I went to school first for undergrad degree. I went and I was born in California, so I went to school at UC San Diego. And the reason that's relevant here is that I had two majors. I had biology and anthropology, and I did that because I was really interested in studying animal behavior. And that made a lot of sense at that university, a lot of people doing that. And I was lucky. I was lucky because at that time there was just a wonderful individual, wonderful mentor, Dr. Christine Johnson, who was studying bonobos. So that's one of the 4 great apes. I think probably a lot of your audience knows that. And there's a group of them at the zoo, the San Diego Zoo, which is kind of a popular place, and the San Diego Wild Animal Park, which is a little bit out of town, but it was a great place to go study both groups. And we did a lot of observational work with bonobos, because my first passion was with the great apes, was looking at non-human primates. So studied a lot of things like if they did pointing gestures, if they followed pointing gestures, how they interacted with their, there's juveniles in each group, how are the sort of relationships going on with this new juveniles growing up in the group, things like that. So then I went to grad school after that, and I worked with chimps. I went to Ohio State, worked with another great mentor, Sally Boysen, and that's where I got more into what we call like just sort of straight up comparative cognition, which is studying cognitive processes in other species. In this case with chimps, looked at kind of it sounds like a kind of a weird question until you kind of break it down a bit, but if you have sort of a scale model of a larger space and you show the chimp something happening in the scale model, do they know that something similar might have happened in the real space? So I'd hide a little miniature bottle of juice. That's a pretty cool thing for a chimp. and a real one in the real part of the cage that looked like the model, and then they could go in and search for it. And chimps, they thought this was the easiest thing ever.
So they figured it out right there.
No problem.
Wow.
No problem.
I think I would have difficulty with that.
Well, I got to tell you, 2.5-year-old kids, human kids, have a hard time with it. By the time you're about 3, you were probably pretty good at it.
Well, let's do we'll run the test on
for you, maybe 4, I don't know, but most kids around 3. So it's kind of cool because they're able to sort of map on what's happened in this smaller space to the real world, and that's a lot of making kind of, some people call it analogies between that small. Some people think of it as maybe chimps are seeing it as a symbol. I saw it as like they really saw the spatially, the similarity between the two places.
Yeah.
And it's, it's not like a human's use of a map, but it's still
seems pretty
cool, right?
pretty
it's
similar.
Still pretty cool.
I know a lot of people that would get lost going home from work without their phones to guide them. So
we're going to use that on our way home today.
And it's not your first visit.
And it's not, no, we're going to need it. Well, there's not many landmarks around here, I've noticed.
Fields.
It's fields. So yeah, anyway, grad school was great, but I wasn't done with my learning yet at that point. And so I did what's called a postdoc. A postdoc, it's a postdoctoral fellowship, sometimes called, after you get your PhD. Postdoc, you can get kind of this wonderful situation if there's funding available where you're working with somebody who has an active lab, you're doing research with them. But with a bit more independence because you know a bit more what you're doing. So I had this great opportunity. I went to Yale, and I worked with some developmental psychologists there. So I actually wasn't studying any non-human animals at that point. I was actually studying infants, human infants and toddlers, which might as well be other
kind of similar.
And I did some of the scale model studies with them as well, but I also did a lot of things about there's sort of how infants start to understand when somebody is being prosocial, being really helpful versus being unhelpful. And that has kind of brought me into my current job at Queen's, which I started in 2004. I've been there that long. And my lab is kind of this cross between doing developmental psychology, so studying young kids, and also then more recently being able to go back to my roots and study non-human animals, in this case with dogs.
So I got a kind of a little bit of origin question for you. So you said when you went to do your undergrad, you already kind of knew that you were interested in studying animals and animal behavior.
Yeah.
How did you land on that?
it's kind of weird. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know, what to major in. So that kind of came later. But as a kid, I remember distinctly wanting a big, I thought a pool would be fine, where I could have a dolphin in the backyard. And mind you, this is Los Angeles, where it gets pretty hot. And I was going to have a pool in my backyard where I was going to have dolphins. I was going to teach the dolphins language. And so you might say, why in the world did you think of that? But I was... Okay, now I'm definitely giving away my age. I was a child in the 70s, and both in the 60s and 70s, if you subscribed to National Geographic, which my family did and loved them, that would arrive on your doorstep, and there would be on the cover, you would get these fabulous women. You'd get Jane Goodall.
Yeah.
You'd get Diane Fossey, who worked with gorillas. You'd get a woman named Birute Galdikas, who worked with orangutans. And then occasionally you'd get these other folks who were studying dolphins in the wild. And so this idea of the animal mind and animal behavior was it was fascinating. And all these women were doing the work too. Yeah. So it was like,
kind of seeing the representation.
So yeah, I thought, I guess at some point that probably sunk in, like, oh, that's something I could do. These people are doing it. But yeah, the dolphin stuff, for whatever reason, they seemed cooler than chimps at the time. But
that's what drove me to dog stuff, was like going to, like the SeaWorld shows and seeing them working with the dolphins and so forth. And I was like, oh wow, like something about that really grasped me with animal behavior. Definitely took different routes than you, but it's really interesting that it was like dolphins specifically.
There was something I think you're right about the aquarium shows. I remember going to SeaWorld, and because we were in LA, we were close to San Diego, had a SeaWorld there, and being on the outs, obviously I was just sort of, there's glass, and then there was an orca and two Pacific white-sided dolphins. I remember distinctly in that pool. And there were 3 of us kids there, and each of them kind of paired up, and we sort of did this little game of chase, running around. So, maybe we were prey, I don't know. But at the time, they'd wait for us to catch up, and then we were just doing this sort of, and I have a memory of that's so vivid, but I was tiny. Yeah,
it's really cool, kind of full circle for me. I got, last month to go and hang out with, dolphin trainers so that was, really cool.
Did you get to do it? Did you bring out the clicker? Did you?
I got to do. Well, we used whistles.
Okay. Yeah.
One of them they used the clicker with, but it was really cool to see some of the things that they're able to do, and the intelligence of those. I just feel like you can't really even put it into words, what they're capable of.
No. So and as an undergraduate, I didn't actually. There wasn't an opportunity to do work at SeaWorld there at the time, and instead there was this opportunity again with Christine. It was this great way of getting doing observational work with the bonobos, and so that just got me thrilled.
Very interesting.
I knew what I wanted to do for sure then.
Yeah. All right, so then we can fast forward to now to your postdoc stuff that you were doing.
So as a postdoc, then I didn't think of it as a switch, but I kind of became more of a developmental psychologist. Got some training there, and then started the lab. Did mostly developmental psychology work. And then started to get this opportunity to study dogs as well. So, because again, I was just itching. I thought, I got plenty more years before I retire, but I want to do some more of this again. And actually, my current grad student, Maeve, who's doing a project with us, it was her dad who approached me. He's a retired canine handler and wanted to talk dogs.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so we talked dogs, and that kind of set wheels in motion. There have been plenty of other people studying dogs, and I've been keeping up with that work. I've been teaching the comparative cognition, teaching animal learning and behavior to students for all those years. So I knew about all the dog studies that were going on, but then sort of seeing opportunities. And then we got connected. Yeah. Actually, as a few steps past that, through Cameron Ford, we got connected. Yeah, we did. I only got connected with him because of a survey I ran that was really helped by his father, Mark McCreary, who helped me put that together. So
just a couple of degrees of separation.
That's right. That's right. It all kind of happened.
So now dolphins and bonobos and children have led you back
to dogs.
Which I'm super excited about, because we're doing some stuff again with one of the grad students, Maeve, right now, and there's a lot of kind of, I guess, room in the future for us to grow and try different things I've always kind of geeked out about dog-specific behavior now, so I'm really excited about this stuff.
So we've got our current study,
and
I'll talk about that, and then we've got lots of ideas, I think, floating around for future stuff. But what happened fairly, soon right after you and I started talking, is a group was developed called the Many Dogs Project, and it's it's an international consortium of canine scientists, and the idea behind this kind of a project, more broadly speaking, is to have researchers from all over the world, all basically doing the same study at the same time, because what that allows for is way more dogs to be tested than any one individual could do, and hopefully a diversity of dog breeds, diversity of dog sort of training experience, and also just sort of a diversity in the culture that's going around here. Like if you go into different regions of the world, how we feel about dogs and how we treat dogs and the experiences dogs have can differ.
I think what really stood out to me about that is just geographical locations, like saying like, hey, how dogs are here in, Canada versus, somewhere in Spain or wherever else they're doing. Are there differences there, or is it just across the board? So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that kind of thing has been sort of in some ways understudied, right? Because we haven't, but this opportunity to everybody is the very first study that the Many Dogs Project is doing is going on right now. That's what we're part of. And it is involving, there's at least 14 labs around the world, but I think there actually might be more now. And the idea is that, it must start off a little simple in a way, because it's the first time trying to coordinate, all that, attempting. Yeah, it takes a huge administrative load. I'm really impressed with the people running it. And so what they focused on for this one, what we're currently running, is really a study of, you could kind of broadly call it dog-human communication, but it's very specifically about following human pointing behavior. And that has, there's tons of studies on this. But it has like a lot of sort of findings that you might think were settled but aren't. Things like, first glance, it looks like dogs are quite, among animals, dogs are quite special in their ability to follow human points, but that's itself kind of mixed in that even chimps in many different situations follow points or even produce points. And it sort of depends on how they're tested, and there's a lot of testing differences. So it's not even quite clear that dogs are special, and it's not even quite clear that even amongst dogs there's not huge differences that may be based on things like age, breed, temperament, experiences that they've had. So there's a lot of unanswered things out there. It's not as clear cut as it immediately seemed, and so. This one's just focusing on dogs. It'd be great someday to expand that across species, but just focusing on dogs. Yeah. And it's really just a study of when, under what conditions, dogs follow points, with the ability to then, if enough dogs are tested, which it's looking like it's going to be enough dogs, at least if, for at least some of the breeds that are well represented in the data set, be able to look for breed differences. There's a lot of knowledge out there about genomes for dog breeds, so be able to look at from a genetics perspective as well.
If there's influences or
and then training history is being measured as well, which is one of the great things of working with you guys, is that we can add to that diversity of training history. There's often not a lot of working dogs. At least not a lot of sort of, let's say, police protection type working dogs. There's often been some who are more of a, sort of assistance dogs or purely scent detection dogs, but maybe not necessarily bite work dogs.
Yeah, I think it's really cool, to see. Obviously, like I've watched some of the testing processes, and to things that you would. Assume like, oh, this dog is definitely going to follow pointing, and them not do that, or dogs that and vice versa, like putting those, like actually seeing it on like just a micro level, for sure is really cool so far. I think there's a lot of, again, like you said, room for that information to potentially help, no matter what we're doing. I have some, before the data is in, kind of assumptions on what I think. Mm-hmm. I think. For like maybe field trial type dogs that are, generations in breeding, to be following handler cues at a distance, maybe they would follow those points a little bit better. Maybe, but again, we don't know until, all that data is in, but I think that's something that potentially would be there. And I think dogs maybe that have been bred to do more independent tasks, we may not see them following those pointing cues. So I'm really interested in seeing how that all comes together. And so just seeing all of those different dogs coming from or different places, in different kind of jobs, and seeing the influence that it can have on just that, I'm going to call it a simple test, but I know it's not a simple test.
Yeah, at first glance, it really is, and that's what's one of the advantages of it. That people around all these different labs could do it. It's low cost. It's so it doesn't involve massive equipment, but it is in order to run it. As you've seen, the sessions are a good half hour, 45 minutes, depending on the dog. And thanks to Maeve for doing what she does, because she does this with no errors across all these trials that have to be very systematic
and very patient. That's our dog Nina in the background.
Who was in the study?
She's so far for our group of testing. Nina was the oldest dog to do the testing. But so kind of moving forward, I know that there's going to be probably, again, when the data comes out, different ways that we could probably pick at it and potentially help training.
Yeah.
What's really cool is that it's also been opened up to not just our personal dogs, but we've been able to get some of the dogs that are with us for training to join in. And so far, everyone's really happy. The dogs love it. It's a fun. I'm going to put in some clips of the actual kind of testing protocol just so we could share with everyone. But now, moving forward in the future, what are some things that are potentially on the horizon? Or that we can...
and things that you and I have chatted about and, hopefully can get up and running. We've been able to secure some funding for some of the work, which is great, and I'd like to be able to get into... I've been very interested in how... I should take a step back and say, because of some of my work in developmental psychology with very young kids, infants, I'm often really interested in how infants in this case, and now dogs, kind of... in some ways think about objects in their world. The pointing study is very much how do you think about the humans in your world, but what do you think about objects in your world? And because it's really kind of interesting stuff with babies, for example, about when you think about, there's just a thing over there, or you think about it as that is my toy, that is a special thing that has a certain color, scent, whatever. And there's at least in humans, a lot of really unique processes that go on with objects that you think are yours, for example, that you own. You have better memory for them. You value them more, things like that.
My stuff is cooler.
So it's just all you have to do is say that's yours. This is mine. It could be a brand new object, and I ask you later, and you're going to remember yours better. It's just something our brains do. I've been kind of interested in this broader question with the dogs and how are they kind of and that I think does have some application to working dogs. I mean, you guys use these objects are rewards, like that
I
is
think
your
for sure. I think
reinforcer
for dogs, I think our primary or secondary reinforcers that we use can become those objects. I think also because like the olfactory plays so big in the dog's world that I if there's kind of ownership over olfactory things, right? Or we know that, this smells like your toy, or this smells like it belongs to you, that special thing. I think the other really cool thing about it is kind of find, like you said, with some of the human things, right? If we say, well, this is yours, and now all of a sudden that's more important to a human. If we figure out how you can say this is yours to a dog, right?
What are the, we... So many of us, I know I do this with my dog, make a grand thing, look, it is your new toy, and it goes in a special place in the house, and it has a certain slobber around it, there are, obvious, those are toys, and there's probably, many of your dogs know they don't touch the kids' toys in the corner, and things like that.
Most of them, we got one that's figuring that out, so.
They do ultimately.
It kind of reminds me, so I grew up with Springer Spaniels, like my family raised Springer Spaniels when I was younger, and we had a dog named Jessie, and she used to go, I could take a rock down by the river, don't do this with your dogs, I was a child, but I would take a rock down by the river and throw that particular rock into the water, and the whole riverbed was filled with rocks, and she would go under the water and take that specific rock back out. So I'm like, there's kind of parallels that like, hey, look, this is your rock amongst all these hundreds of thousands of rocks.
So something about, the features of that rock, she was able to, she distinguished
whatever
that.
it may, and it would be a different rock every time, that I would take out and throw for her, so there's something there.
So for humans, that's a big accomplishment to kind of remember those things. That's it's sure in our first year of life, but that's a thing. So the idea that something that's almost seems so featureless, just like a rock amongst other rocks, has been so well encoded. By your dog.
She was able to, and I distinctly have that memory because that was like the game that I played with her down at the river. Okay, this is the rock that we're using, and throwing that into the river. I think The other thing, again, olfactory is so important in, you know, a dog's life, and then also in some of the applications and how they help us, that I really think that there's kind of potentially some like really important information that we can find studying kind of that, like, this is yours. This is. And what I love about working with you is that you're going to have ideas for studies I would never have, because you're really the dog expert. Don't put that on me. You're the dog expert. It's clear, and you also have a sense of, you know, kind of the questions that you feel like perhaps, you know, experts in your line would like to know some answers to, and that's what I think it's been great about the study of dogs lately, has been those connections between practitioners like yourself, working again like with you, and like getting the science, you know, to actually be like applicable. A lot of times there's like information that comes out about dogs, and like it's really cool information just because I like dogs and dog behavior, but figuring out ways to draw those parallels to like actually, one, benefit just the dogs in general, but two, like how we can utilize them and how we can make the work more efficient and more fun and more fair, and the dogs being into what we need them for. You know, I think that drawing those lines and, you know, getting, you know, like practitioners to get together with the science folks. And you guys help us, and we help you. I think it's really, really beneficial. No, I think it's needed. I think it's needed because there's again, like research questions I'd never think of asking if it wasn't for, you know, you pointing out certain things or recognizing some needs that, you know, hey, if we only knew this is gonna, and then, you know, my skills come in as, you know, trying to figure out how to design an experiment, data analysis, that kind of thing. Absolutely. But and that's where I love canine science, for that ability, for that what we typically call sort of foundational basic science, to have application pretty quickly potentially. So some other areas it's a few steps down the road. But because we can adjust kind of quickly in our world. All right, so what our plan is, moving forward, is we're going to try and give everyone kind of updates on the progress and like the work that we're doing together as we continue here. So we'll kind of wrap up today. Where can people find more information or get a hold of you in the lab? A few different places. We've got a lab website that's just socialcognitionlab.com. I think you can put it in the links. We've got an Instagram account, which is, I think, also just under Social Cognition Lab. And otherwise, anybody who's really interested in particular in the Many Dogs Project, they have a website, and you could just Google Many Dogs Project. But again, and then I'll put all of those links and stuff kind of in the description of the video. So if you guys want more information, you can click those links there, and we'll kind of take it from there. But thank you again for sitting down and chatting with us. I have a ton more stuff that we could talk about. But, you know, we're going to limit the memory on the camera. So again, if you guys are interested, you know, we're going to post those links below. And thank you for watching. Ciao, ciao.